And now it's time for Impact Corner with Dr. G and Miss Thang.
And at this time, it is that time again, 7:45, time for Impact Corner of Dr. G. Good morning, Dr. G.
Well, good morning, Miss Stephanie. So how's it going?
All is well. How are you this morning?
Absolutely wonderful. I do hope and pray the listening audience has had a great weekend. I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to look at the paper this morning, so I'm not sure what may have happened over the weekend, but hoping and praying all is well. Absolutely. So this morning we're going to focus on, remember we said we're going to be using these titles interchangeably, hashtag she leads and hashtag help her lead. Well, this morning we're looking at hashtag help her lead by navigating this thing called the glass ceiling. And so before we can begin to navigate through or around the glass ceiling, it is important first to know what is this glass ceiling. And then we can devise strategies to overtake or even break the glass ceiling. Well, it's made of glass, right? But in 1978, a writer consultant, Marilyn Loden, at a panelist discussion about women in the workplace, came up with the idea to describe the challenges women face when their careers stagnated at middle management roles, preventing them from attaining higher leadership or executive positions. And more recent, when one refers to the glass ceiling, it is captured as a metaphor describing an invisible barricade that marginalizes women and other minor groups from reaching higher levels of professional status. And these barriers are biases entrenched in the culture of the organizational hierarchies that intentionally keep individuals from advancing into senior management positions. And that's regardless of one's qualifications. Now, there have been some improvements or progress in the workplace over the past several decades, but we as women are still facing this glass ceiling. And there's still one main element that supports the glass ceiling practices, and that is salary. I read that in 2022, women's median earnings were only 83% of men's median earnings, not 100, 83% of men's median earnings. Why not equal pay for equal work? Well, anyway, while less than 9% of Fortune 500 companies had women in CEO positions. So what are some effects of the glass ceiling? As I just mentioned, receiving less pay than colleagues of different gender or ethnicity who are doing the same job, being treated as incompetent, experiencing job rejections over and over again. We are often encouraged to pursue jobs that leave us vulnerable to economic downturns. The U.S. identified during the most recent recession over 1 million women left the workplace or the workforce. So to help her lead, we will highlight how we can begin to break down or navigate this glass ceiling. And remember or realize it requires intentional strategies. But before we can attempt to break the ceiling, we must be able to identify it. And there are warning signs, ladies. And I do understand that we need to work. But if during the interview process you've identified inappropriate comments, and it could come by way of other female leaders because they have adapted to the stagnant environment. And that means that no matter how hard you have worked, opportunities for advancement will be a slow time coming, which will require you to make a decision. Am I going to stay or do I need to move on? And perhaps you are advised that that's just how things are done here as a baseline on whether promotions are afforded. There's another factor. When the culture shifts, either because of new leadership or ownership, and you note the type of language that is used when speaking to you versus your male counterpart, maybe it's time to reconsider. The lack of diversity in leadership roles, lack of innovation, just a blatant disregard for what you bring to the table. There are at least 3 basic steps one can take to begin to tackle this glass ceiling. Number 1, channel your frustration into purposeful action. First, recognize the glass ceiling is no reflection of your value as a person or as an employee. I need to say that again. because sometimes in these environments, we become so deflated, so demotivated because of the environment. But I need you to recognize that the glass ceiling is no reflection of your value as a person or as an employee. It's because of the organization. And really, no matter what you do, you'll still be denied the opportunity. So then develop your awareness by learning more about the organization you currently work for or the one you intend to work for by observing the culture of the organization. And the third and final point, if the organization is predominantly male, or the last time a female was promoted in the organization, let's say it was like 25 years ago, then raise your concerns. Now, for some, if you're strong-willed, you're optimistic, and you really desire to work in that particular environment, then stay the course and fight for what you think you deserve. If you're credentialed for the position, then raise concerns. And if all else fails, then take responsibility for your own development. Now, I want to share a story, and it is a true story, believe it or not, of a female who took on a leadership position that had always been held by a male. Now, on this particular occasion, the CEO was in town and wanted to meet with all his leaders. Again, they were all male except for this one female. And they were engaged in meetings, and then the meeting carried over during the lunch break. And then the CEO got up to go to the men's room, and of course the conversation was a heated one, and he commanded his leaders to follow him in the restroom. And she marched in with all the other leaders into the men's bathroom. Now, stunned by her presence, the CEO wanted to know why she was in the men's bathroom. And she replied, "You asked all your leaders to follow you in the men's room. Well, here I am." Sometimes, ladies, we must recognize that the glass ceiling is glass, and it can be broken if we exercise fortitude. To navigate the glass ceiling, and note, we are all confronted with something that will prohibit upward movement. Number one, the maneuver is to engage in conversation with the correct people about your observances, your experiences. And you know what? There may be backlash, but you can counter this by emphasizing that change doesn't have to be threatening. Change should simply allow those who deserve opportunities to have access to them, regardless of ethnicity, gender, or any other factor for that matter. Number two, reach out to your colleagues who have seniority. Perhaps they can rally with you with information on how to be heard. And number three, perhaps reach back to your HR department. And why I say that? Because I work in HR. And challenge them on the organization's hiring processes and the marginalization that is happening in the organization. From our point of view, it's very hard to correct something if you don't know it's happening. Now, for those of us who have had the experience of skillfully navigating the glass ceiling, thank you for helping her lead. Now we're asking you to reach back and help her lead. Ladies, remember, we are phenomenal leaders. Hashtag help her lead by navigating the glass ceiling so we all can excel. And while I was doing some research, I came across another phenomenon, and that's the glass cliff. How non-traditional leaders are promoted to senior positions where there's a high level of employment failure. So next week we'll talk about the glass cliff. Remember, you're the composer with the pen. Begin transcribing your destiny. So, Miss Stephanie, I knew I would be under this morning. I just want to leave us with today's nugget for newness. The glass ceiling is glass. Mm-hmm. It can be broken if we come together with fortitude. Mm-hmm. So I'm 5 minutes short, and I didn't get to talk to you before, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but you always seem to be able to jump in with both feet. So we're talking about this glass ceiling. I don't know if you have experienced it, and if so, what are some tricks of the trade that's helped you get around or navigate? Because it is there, but it's man-made, you know.
You know, that's a good point. And honestly, I've met people who've had to deal with that glass ceiling. But me personally, I can't say I've experienced it myself. But I know it's definitely necessary, and it does happen every day. You know, so yeah.
I watched some of my colleagues, you know, who've had to struggle, you know. Anyway, I'm going to stay on track. They've had to struggle, and they work endless hours, you know, to be quote unquote recognized that their level of commitment is there. But they've been working these hours for years, some of them decades. It don't take that long for someone to recognize your value and that you're committed, you know. And yet, this is not a bash session, guys. It's really not. But then I see my male counterparts skipping and missing, you know, not really performing, and they're promoted. And they get the pay. But yet I gotta, you know, jump through hoops, loops, you know, swim the English Channel, you know, meet with the Loch Ness Monster, and still I'm not recognized.
Right.
And so that's you this morning, ladies. Remember, the glass ceiling does not tell you your value. You gotta believe in you.
Yeah.
And if you find out that in that organization, like, you know, you feel like you're pounding your head against a brick wall, remember also that is to create these internal muscles so that when you go to another organization, and trust me, organizations are made up of certain things. And the one thing that is made up of is people. So you might jump from one organization to another thinking the grass is greener on the other side and find out the grass was greener where you were.
Right.
You know? But the glass ceiling, it is a real phenomenon, you know, and I do recognize that, well, because of my space, that women of color seem to be really bombarded with this glass ceiling. You know, we got to do all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah.
To try and advance, you know, and well, it's really not fair. You know, we are educated, you know. Now hear me out. If you haven't done your homework and you're saying that you need to be promoted, but you haven't gotten, taken the time out to personally develop, because it's all about the credentials. You know, your paper, your resume has got to demonstrate that you are learned, you know. So, you know, I want to be a medical doctor. You know, I'm aiming for a PhD, but it ain't in medicine. So I can't wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I want to be the top surgeon. At least you all don't want me to be the top surgeon in a hospital, you know, because I don't have those credentials. But the glass ceiling is real, but don't let that devalue your value.
And you know what, I because just listening to you and where I could relate, right, Dr. G, which a lot of people could relate as well, is even if the ladies are trying to move forward or trying to show their worth and stuff like that, and males are not in the way, they still have a hard time pushing forward just because they're a female. So I think I have maybe experienced that, where I was in a place with a lot of females and I was working and I was, you know, showing that I could do other things, I had other skills to move forward in the company, and they preferred to keep me where I was at. And they said because I was so good where I was at, but I knew I would be good no matter where you put me, and I wanted to grow. So I think people are afraid of change sometimes. And
That's it. And there's a level of insecurity as well.
Yes.
A great leader, and, you know, I've had the opportunity to sit under some really great leadership. They've always taught me that a great leader will build people around them so that they can elevate it. So for an example, if I keep you suppressed under my thumb, that means that you only grow as much as I grow. If I'm willing to teach you all that I have, then that means, Stephanie, you can step in that role But it means if you can step in the role, that gives room for me to elevate.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And it is challenging because I might teach you everything and you might outshine me, and then there might be nowhere for me to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I'm more apt to kind of hang on to my skill set. You know, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. You know, and not be willing to share. But hashtag help her lead. It speaks to us that where we are as leaders, we know the struggle. We know that we have to push. And the reality is, why not help someone else?
Exactly, yeah.
To achieve, you know? They're still going to have to take their own bumps, their own licks. But we could be that mentor. You know, listen, if you can get some books and read a book on leadership, that's usually someone's life that they've taken 60 to 80 years to develop. They put it in a book that you can read in less than a day or two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that gives you opportunity to hone in and sharpen. But again, you know, the glass ceiling, it is prevalent in our workplaces. You know, and sometimes, you know, you want to fight it. Or sometimes you just decide you want to move on. But if you decide to fight, remember what it's doing for you. It's giving you these internal muscles, you know, so that when, you know, you actually, because I'm telling you, once you fight for it and then you achieve it, then it's time to move on again. And then you start looking at other opportunities, and those other opportunities are again, and maybe in another organization, or maybe even starting your own business.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and if you had the struggle under someone else's hood, you could only imagine what it would be like to do your own. Because not everybody is going to be for you, and not everybody's going to support you.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, you have that struggle, and that's those internal muscles. When you were developing in that organization, you try to figure out, I don't know why it's so hard. Well, it's so hard because now when you move out on your own, you have I know we don't have statistical fortitude, but that's the words I want to use right now. We have this statistical fortitude that we can, you know, overcome, even though the odds may seem to be against us. So ladies and gents, together we can drive the change to shift, navigate, and break the glass ceiling. Again, the glass ceiling is glass, and it can be broken if we come together with fortitude. I invite you to follow me on any of my social media platforms, of course, Facebook at Godwin International, and for those that hit me up, thank you. Twitter at Godwin INTL, email at info@godwininternational.org, and LinkedIn, Georgette Prime-Godwin. So we just popped slightly over the hour, the 15 minutes, I'm sorry, and so be intentional today. You are the composer with the pen. I say this purposefully because you can drive your destiny. Begin to transcribe it. What does it look like? There's it's an adage that is written in a piece of literature. It says, write the vision and make it plain. If we don't write it, we will hit it 100% every time because we wrote down nothing. But when you write it, it causes you to stay on point, stay on focus. So no matter what comes your way, you can still achieve what it is that you set your desire upon. So with that, Miss Stephanie.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a great day, girl.
You too. Thank you so much. Very impactful, very insightful, and very much needed as usual. Thank you for what you do.
All the best. Yes, thank you, and all the best.
You as well. Have a good day. Okay, bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.